I think it might be worthwhile just setting the scene a little bit, just explain why this webinar is being organized by Ribbon. Who is Ribbon? Many of you, I'm sure, by now will be aware that Ribbon was formed from the merger of two companies, Genband and Sonos, at the end of October last year. Ribbon is a global leader in secure real-time communications. We provide software, cloud, and network infrastructure solutions to communication service providers and enterprises worldwide. And those service providers obviously include the mobile and fixed customer base. Currently, we're around 2,500 employees, 27 countries, 1,000 plus customers that we can count as references. So we've been in business as the former companies for 20 plus years. So I think now that gives you a fair idea of who Ribbon Communications is and why we're talking to you today about SS7 and diameter signaling. So if we go to the next slide, I'd just like to talk about the agenda today. Now, a lot of you on the bridge will be experts in this field, I can tell already. So we're going to assume some a priori knowledge about SS7 and diameter signaling, but don't worry, we will be addressing some of the fundamentals as we go through, first of all, the market trends, some of the key challenges that we're hearing our customers talking about. We'll also then go on to look at how the Ribbon solutions can address some of these key challenges, highlight some use cases and success stories that are worth sharing to show you what can be done. And then we'll summarize at the end, and we'll open it up to questions either through the chat window, as Lars has said, or verbally if we have time. So next slide, please. So let's look at some of the key market trends here. And this chart shows a chart with past history and forecasts of how the mobile subscriber base is looking going forwards. And the reason that we're looking at subscribers here is because, you know, we're trying to relate the messages about subscribers and 2G and 3G and 4G networks to what the signaling marketplace looks like. So clearly, you know, legacy signaling is all about 2G and 3G circuit switch networks. And even as the rollout of 4G LTE and 4G VoLTE grows, 2G and 3G networks are still going to dominate for quite some time to come, right? So this is a clear message from this kind of chart. What we're seeing, however, is that even as 4G networks roll out, and you know, pretty much LTE is fully deployed worldwide, and VoLTE is now growing, it's interesting that that the whole LTE ecosystem is becoming more complex in terms of so many more services are possible now on LTE and VoLTE networks. It's not just voice, right? It's about messaging and rich services, and people who are attaching to the network needing to get authorized and authenticated for a whole spectrum of services. So the signaling traffic, the diameter traffic in LTE networks is growing even faster than the rollout of basic LTE and VoLTE itself. So that's a strong message. And then, of course, independently, we're seeing that the push to virtualize and the push to the NFV cloud is forging ahead. Virtualization already is a dominant feature in the marketplace, and NFV is beginning to roll out now. And of course, the industry as a whole is getting ready for this shift from 4G to 5G, and we'll talk a little bit about 5G use cases in the upcoming charts. But the message is that even with all of this happening, 2G, 3G, SS7 doesn't go away, right? So we are still looking now in the next several years where we're going to have mixed deployments, mixed networks with both SS7 and diameter signaling that need to be supported. So with that said, let's go on to key challenges, and we'll talk a little bit here about what our customers are telling us that is important to them. And we're going to go through each of these topics in the next short while with you today. We're going to explain what we see as important drivers here, what the challenges are, what the opportunities are to solve these challenges. So let me just introduce them real quick. So when we say simplification of the network, you know, in certain geographies, North America, for example, the use of STPs, signaling transfer points, and DSCs, diameter signaling controllers, are fairly commonplace. That may not be the case in other geographies. So it's interesting that, you know, in the legacy networks, there are still quite a lot of mesh-type connections between the SS7 and the diameter nodes. So when operators move into, you know, using STP and DSC, then clearly simplifying the network, simplifying the core routing, brings the kind of efficiency and scalability that that operators are needing. So that's one challenge. Second challenge is security, right? So security, there's a heightened awareness of security these days. In fact, you know, it's in the news wherever you look. Security in one shape, size, form, or another. So it's interesting that you know, legacy networks like SS7, they work just fine, but they were never designed with anything but a walled garden type of implementation in mind. So as these networks open up and move to IP and move to mobile networks and interconnects, then we have to worry about the security issues of that. And the challenges in SS7 have moved over to diameter. So we're going to talk about some of those challenges and how you can solve them. Virtualization. Virtualization is there is a continued momentum for virtualizing networks, going from bespoke appliances to COTS, commercial off-the-shelf servers, to be more efficient in terms of CapEx and infrastructure costs. And then, of course, you know, moving beyond simple virtualization to NFV and VNF type implementations in order to get the flexibility, the service agility, the operational efficiencies that virtualization brings. So that's a challenge. And then the fourth one, and perhaps the most important today that we're going to focus on, is that existing systems for both STP and diameter may have been deployed in the marketplace for quite some years now, especially on the SS7 side. And so there is a real issue with regards to certain platforms becoming end of life, end of support. And so that's a factor that needs to be thought about going forwards. And all of that in the context of protecting your investment. So if you do upgrade these end-of-life systems, then how can you be sure that any new investments will serve as a good platform going forwards, right? So whether, you know, just upgrading a pure SS7 without the capability of doing diameter, that might be a lost opportunity in terms of being able to save versus a system that can do both on a single platform, for example. So having said that, those are the challenges that we see, and we'd like to now invite the audience to give their input, and this will be extremely helpful to us for the rest of this webinar, but also to share with the attendees on the webinar today. So please take a moment and take a look at, you know, which of those challenges that I've gone through briefly are important to you, and just vote. I think, Lance, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, please select all that apply. So you can select more than one. And so we'll take a few moments here and see what the results are looking like. And I think that we're still collecting the responses. I'm seeing here on my screen, and I think once Lance is satisfied that we've got a good selection of responses, so please feel free to keep submitting your replies here, and then we'll take a look.
And Kim, we're about 40, now we're a little over 50%, 60% have voted, and thank you all for your participation in these polls. They really do help us understand your challenges. So I think we're a little over 60% now have voted, so I don't know if you want to look at those results, Kim, and you can kind of speak to what you're seeing. I think the data there now will hold true throughout.
That's great. So Lance, is there a way that you can share that with the audience as well?
Yeah, I believe I have to close the poll first, and I can share it back with the audience. So let me do that now that we have most everyone has voted.
Let's do that, and let's everyone see here what.
You should see that now, Kim.
Absolutely, this is great. Okay. So now that's interesting. So network simplification still is the #1 driver here and challenge that that the audience is seeing. So I must admit that that did surprise me a little bit, because I thought that we would be down the road in that regard already. But hey, that's great. You know, there are a lot of things we can talk about that during the webinar today. Security is important. Virtualization is important, and then the legacy end-of-life STP and DC platforms are an issue too. So thanks everyone for that feedback. Great to know, and we will now proceed with the next segment of the webinar, which is looking at how we can address and how we can go into more detail on these challenges, and then how we can address them. So I'm going to hand over to Prasanna, my colleague right now. Prasanna, do we have you?
Yes, you do. Thank you, Kim. Hello, everyone. As Kim had pointed out earlier, or you guys yourselves have pointed out, all of you, in kind enough in voting, you know, as an operator, you may come across many challenges, right, with regards to your signaling network. So it is constantly evolving, and irrespective of whether you know, you're offering TDM service or all IP, you know, being an MSO cable operator or wireless service providers, or, you know, and combination of all three service offering, right? So irrespective to the kind of service offering, there is always some kind of requirement for signaling and routing that is taking place within your network. So as the first step, as a representative, you look for a solution which, you know, to help you smoothly upgrade your mature and stable SS7 signaling network all the way to the advanced diameter networks, right? As we highlighted in the market slide just a few minutes back, you know, when we talk about the networks, so TDM, PSTN, 2G, 3G network users are still in large amounts. And then we have this big blowout in terms of all the 4G LTE next generation network users in your network. So to minimize your OPEX, you know, carriers like you look for a converged solution that supports both SS7 and diameter, and you know, which functions as both the invariably STP and for example DRA DEA functions, right? So in addition, you look at whether it supports the broad list of various networks and protocols and variants that are associated with the SS7 and diameter, which can be anything like a PSTN, TDM, SIGTRAN to 2G, 3G up to all the way to 4G LTE, right? So, and once we've done the identification, you know, identifying this operational efficiency and interface support, then we start identifying other key drivers, you know, in regards to simplifying your signaling network, right? So what are the deployment options in terms of NFV? So we get down to that, you know, in terms of software or hardware based or fully virtualized based, and most importantly, a solution that, you know, that would evolve with your network and your users. So with Ribbon, you know, we offer a combined or standalone diameter or SS7 signaling solution, right? So one is we work with carriers to evolve your network in a more efficient way as possible. Considering STP-based SS7 and diameter will coexist for a very long time, and you know, and with the interworking function or, you know, integrated solution support, all with one platform, so you can definitely lower your network deployment cost by reducing the you know, the number of network devices which are required in your network. And also enabling dynamic, you know, which enables dynamic resource sharing, right, between your SS7 and diameter networks, which in return of maximizes your return on investment. Also, with this type of signal integration, we can further minimize the OPEX, right, and improve the network evolution flexibility, allowing the DSC to change the protocols and interfaces from SS7 to diameter and back. So addressing those, and then, you know, let's we all know in today's network, you know, security is of prime importance to all the operators and also end users, right? Especially in the signaling network, we are talking about hackers who are increasingly, taking advantages of these SS7 vulnerabilities and diameter protocols vulnerabilities, right? So why should the operator care about this more than ever? A lot of us think we should, most of us, we focus on the evolution to LTE diameter based network, and we focus our solution, even security analytics solutions or management OSS BSS solutions, more towards those, right? However, the legacy SS7 protocols based networks still serve the vast majority of wireless subscribers today. To start it off, the hackers can obtain subscriber information, right? That's the information gained by the attacker, which can be sold for revenue without the end user and the operator realizing, that their subscriber identity has been compromised. And locations of those end users, right, further helps the attackers to know whether they are at the home network or a roaming network. And further, hacking into the SS7 network, it could leave the operators in a great financial loss, and not to mention reputation loss amongst their customers. So once the door is open, it would allow the intruders to listen to or record a subscriber conversation on incoming or outgoing calls, or to even intercept and modify incoming text messages to a target subscribers, right? So what are the ROIs of doing nothing? So what is the return on investment of doing nothing? It's a great financial loss, right? Not only to you as an operator, but the subscriber too, considering his data is being compromised. And one example would be that lots of countries and banks use SMS as a form of bank authentication or financial authentication, and the ability to intercept those information would definitely cause a severe financial theft with regards to. So in addition to all these, there are customer retentions impact, right? On top of it, denial of service penalties. There might be, again, reputation, loss of revenue, etc., right, which comes along with that. So what is the industry doing, and what are we as a solution provider offering to, protect your networks, right? So STP as the first line of defense, we are talking about Ribbon STP per se, but in general, we do use gateway screening as the first line of defense, and it's really your first level of protection into the SS7 network within STP, right? So that you want to make sure that you're putting some form of sentry at the edge of the network to ensure that the carriers, they are interconnecting or authorized to transit through their network, right? So this serves two purposes, to be precise. One is bandwidth stealing, which is using and leveraging a competitor's network to transmit message across. So you want to block those type of messages. And then from the protection of the SS7 firewall, you want to be able to block intrusive messages from bad actors, right? So the SS7 network has always been insecure, and we haven't spoken about that earlier. And so with this whole wireless issue and the vulnerabilities that are there, we want to be able to block traffic coming into the network that would not be querying the systems and the nodes within the network. So one prime example that we could give from our thing is that it would be an ATNI message, for example. So what it means is the ATNI message is a message that is intended for internal use within a carrier's network. If ATNI messages are arriving from outside the network, then this is we can identify it as an intrusive type of message that is suggesting that someone from outside the network is trying to gather all the information on the subscriber. So this message could be blocked at the entry into your network with the gateway screening, right? So with our gateway screening and some of the enhancements that we have put into our gateway screening, we can address most of the category 1 and 2 attack management as per the GSMA, IRA 82 document. So this really does address all of those vulnerabilities under those categories. And then we do have category 3 type of attacks, which require some form of contextual awareness. And we do not cover that. We do cover that with our partner today, and we'll be covering that later, little in depth later. So saying that, Kim, if you don't mind, could you join in and throw us some details on the virtualization and signaling space?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Prasanna. So going to the next challenge then, and talking about virtualization and factors which are affecting virtualization. And actually, if you don't mind just going back one chart there, Prasanna, that would be just great. I want to talk a little bit about, some of the factors for virtualization. And moving from virtualization to more of a cloud-native OpenStack NFV environment, right? So whether we're talking about the STP platform or whether we're talking about a diameter signaling controller platform, these principles are really just the same. And so, we are already well down the path of virtualization, meaning that software has been disaggregated from the hardware platform that it runs on. And so we can ship software which is basically available to run on any suitable server, COTS server in a server farm in a data center, for example. But the industry is moving beyond that, right? And it's more than just virtualization. So some of the things that we're looking at in terms of NFV and virtualized network functions within an NFV environment are those that are listed on this chart. And these are the things that we're working on. We see these as priorities. This is what the industry is demanding from an NFV environment. So, when we talk about instantiate as a runtime ready, what does that mean? Well, that means that our STP, our SS7 or DSC software is a VNF, a virtualized network function in the NFV environment. And it's available as part of an ecosystem that allows it to be highly automated and standardized in terms of the process to onboard that VNF into the OpenStack NFV environment. And under the control of something like a VNF manager, then the APIs that are needed to integrate that VNF into the OpenStack ecosystem can be done automatically. No operator intervention. The VNF manager would have wizards and menus and easy to use menus that would offer a lot of operational savings, enhanced productivity, and would allow the full automation of that VNF in the NFV cloud. We talk about elasticity. That's important. The ability to scale either vertically with the addition of VNFs automatically, or horizontally within the VNFs at the virtual machine level in order to respond to varying traffic loads and traffic demands. So in that way, we can optimize the cost of the infrastructure and not, hog all the capacity when we don't need it. Flexible load balancing, which means that essentially as you deploy a system and have to face flexible and dynamic traffic loads, then you can do that in the most efficient way through load balancers that act as single point of contact into your application. Resiliency and high availability, very, very important. And this is something which, as we step from the virtual world and even the appliance world beforehand, where we're used to this 1+1 type redundancy environment, then in the NFV world, we're looking at microservices and cloud-native architectures of VNFs that allow for resiliency and redundancy at the virtual machine level. And it's not just 1+1 active standby. Then you're looking at active-active type redundancy schemes and M+M, where you can quickly spin up additional VMs, not only for capacity, but also VMs that you can then share the load across if one VM might happen to go down. If a server instance goes down, then you can quickly come back up without loss of service and many times without loss of calls and states. And you can do this in an automated and seamless way. Performance at scale, very important for carriers to be able to have the ability to have carrier grade capacity. and essentially be able to have that in an efficient way, especially when you're using the NFVI architecture and hardware capacities, especially in the compute arena. Analytics to manage your VNFs and make sure that they're performing adequately and be able to control that and monitor that. And this talks to the big data world and interactive dashboards to see what's happening in real time and take action. Cloud licensing, very important to move away from the rigidity of traditional element-based, node-based licensing, and to move to something which is more flexible, something which is more application-based, multi-site-based, takes into account the geo-distributed nature of software applications in the NFV cloud. And then finally, and perhaps even most importantly, the ability to operate within an ecosystem where we are working with partners that have the orchestration layer, for example, or have the virtual infrastructure management layer, or the infrastructure layer itself, the NFVI. So industry leaders like Red Hat, Intel, Wind River, etc. Important to be able to interoperate with those players so that specialized companies like Ribbon, when we have our VNFs, we can basically bring to the market production-ready resources for that. So if we quickly go to the next slide, I just want to set the context a little bit in terms of, why is all this virtualization important? Why is NFV Cloud important? Well, these are some of the kind of fundamental industry tenets that obviously we don't have time to go into that basic discussion today. Suffice it to say that, NFV brings the tremendous promise of service agility and operational efficiency, infrastructure savings. But importantly, and I touched on this at the beginning, when we look at, moving beyond 4G and moving to 5G, and NFV infrastructure is going to play a dominant role in 5G use cases. So why do we have to be prepared for this? Well, this example on the screen right now just talks about a use case of network slicing. And many of you might be familiar with this concept whereby if you can essentially chop up this huge monolithic network that we have today and be able to slice those networks according to the specific requirements of those sectors, then that allows us to become much more flexible and respond to the needs of the different networks, right? So you might have mobile broadband, which is the traditional kind of smartphone, LTE network today, fixed broadband, which what that refers to then is essentially using fixed wireless as a broadband option that will have different latency and quality of service requirements. Using the network for public safety, such as FirstNet or a similar operator that would have usage priorities and restricted users on their network. And then lastly, an Internet of Things type use case where different types of resources, if you look at what a connected refrigerator might need in terms of network resources in the Internet of Things, those kind of resources would be totally different to the connected car type of use case, especially an autonomous car driving down the freeway at 70 miles an hour. You'd imagine that sort of network response would that sort of use case would need much higher bandwidth, much lower latency, etc., than a connected refrigerator. So as we move into, excuse me, the 5G world, these are the kind of things we have to respond to. And these are the kind of things that our signaling platform would have to be able to cope with and be able to exist in this NFV environment. So that's just by way of a quick introduction. I'm going to hand it back to you, Prasanna, to the next topic.
Thanks,
Hey,
Kim.
hey, Prasanna, before we get going, I just want to remind the audience to please do ask your questions in the bottom right-hand side of your screen. We do have some experts standing by. A couple of questions have already come in, and the guys behind the scenes there are answering those. So just wanted to remind everyone to please utilize that feature. If you have a specific question you'd like some answers to, feel free to use that. Go ahead, Prasanna. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Matt. No worries. So, thanks, Kim, once again. So As operator, one of the biggest challenge in signaling network migration you face is the STP replacements, right? And why now? So you will ask yourself all of these questions, right? Can I continue using the existing STP equipments, until I migrate, or should I wait and watch until, finally getting migrated to the next generation of networks? Is your vendor going to support it? What is the total cost of ownership if you do decide to replace your STPs? Then is there a future evolution path, right, towards diameter if you're a mobile operator? And so saying all those, we as a solution provider will work closely with you and recommend you a couple of opportunities here. One is to replace the existing STPs, which is a straightforward method, and another is to deploy in a cap and grow type of scenario, right? So customers who wants to leave in place your existing STPs, we can encourage them to cap any future deployments. So you may have a legacy platform and you want to limit the investment in that existing platform, so that we position, so we have Ribbon STP that could interconnect with a smaller number of SIG-TRAN links back to the existing STP of yours. And by this, we can offload a lot of those traffic onto the existing STP and service that, right? So eventually what you have done is, we can rehome all of those, all of these other connections or new connections onto the Ribbon STP, and eventually cut off or drown out the existing STPs of yours. So we have done this in numerous instances where we put them side by side, whereby eventually you can retire that old STP of yours as we rehome the nodes onto it. So when we look at what's in the Ribbon's portfolio, we touched on it briefly. Already you got the DSC 8000. You can see here as a single shelf or a multi-shelf deployment. We have that is it can go up to 4 shelves together. That is if you require an extremely large capacity of STP or diameter solution. So we have taken that same software from these that is being used in this platform, and we have virtualized. So we have virtualized and named a product called DSC Suite solution, which is available on a COTS-based platform, wherein the customer chooses the hardware platform as long as it meets our hardware requirement, right? So you can deploy this Suite on the hardware of your choice. So we also have worked towards moving the DSC Suite into the cloud environment, which Kim was giving a brief update on the NFV side of things too. So prior to being Ribbon, Genband and Sonus, has a long partnership and were productizing and reselling SS7 signaling or STPs as a SP2000 platform in fixed network evolution portfolio of ours, to be specific, the C20 platforms. So within the SP2000 that is deployed today, this is actually natively the same solution as what we are deploying with our STPs today. It's the same software load, it's just repackaged differently. So for example, within the C20 on the ATCA platform, it uses the actual cards that are installed in the DSC 8000. So you really brought the two teams together as we are working forward. So what you can do, what you can look forward to as in our existing customers, the SP2000, which comes along with C20, will also go down the virtualization path in the future releases. So to start with the virtualization, the SP2000 will be onboarded with our virtualized C20 offering in our MARMS platform. And as it moves to the NFV with the signaling, signaling will also evolve together with it. So to all of our fixed network transformation customers here at the webinar and as well outside this webinar with the existing C20s and SP2000, please look into our further updates on the virtualized deployment options that's coming your way. So what we have seen in that, there are lots of end-of-life and end-of-support STP vendors out there, right? So of course, to straightforward name a few is like Nortel, USPs, and LPPs, which is end-of-life and end-of-support, or going to be end-of-support, and lots of other legacy STP vendors. All of these are end-of-life and end-of-support, right? So while customers are looking to migrate and get their SIG-TRAN into the network or move into the diameter space, there's still a lot of legacy in the network. They still need to be able to service those TDM circuits today, right? Since we covered extensively about this topic earlier, I just wanted to say in a high level, there are lots of you with one or some of these end of life or end of support or out of support equipments, and at Ribbon, we have this extensive support and transformation experience to help you migrate or transform your signaling network, right? So as I was mentioning earlier, that with our Ribbon DSC solution, we address the category 1 and 2 vulnerabilities as defined by the GSMA. This really does address most of the security attacks, but for the extended version, we do have category 3 attack management. We do use a partner called Cellusys for customers. So for customers who are looking for advanced SS7 gateway screening and Ribbon STP platforms, we do allow for a lot of these, advanced SS7 routings. So one of that will be, we allow for routing based on specifically screening criteria. A quick example, would be using our gateway screening redirect option, where we would take all the SMS messages coming through the system, for example, and redirect that off to a third-party application like Cellusys, who offer an advanced SMS defense solution for blocking spam and fraudulent messages coming into your network, right? With this, I will let Kim talk to you about some business cases and deployment examples before he wraps things up for you.
Great, thanks, Prasanna. So, yeah, for those in the audience, let's take a look now at a couple of use cases which I think are pertinent and relevant to the topic in hand. I've got a couple here that I would want to share with you. So I'm able here to talk about this and mention the customer because in this case the customer was issued a press release about this particular case. So it's about Korea Telecom. It's one of the largest tier 1 carriers in South Korea, and this is a very interesting use case. Actually, it's a two-part case. They had originally deployed multiple STPs in their environment, but those became end of life essentially from another equipment vendor, and so the opportunity was there to upgrade and replace those end of life platforms with the Ribbon DSC 8000 as an STP platform, and so that was the first stage in this use case. So that was a good success story, and that's still running there. And then shortly after that, as the operator saw that the amount of LTE traffic was increasing in their 4G network, and the signaling traffic was increasing, then they took the opportunity to look at diameter solutions. And again, in this particular case, a previous solution had been deployed that was end of life. So the great thing about this was the DSC 8000 that was already installed as the STP platform basically could be easily upgraded to provide the diameter functionality. So really, it was a great opportunity to protect the investment that was already done in the DSC 8000 for SS7, and literally, but just by dropping additional routing processor cards into that platform, then that provided the diameter function. So the customer is moving forward with this solution. What was really a key takeaway was that it was very easy to deploy, very easy for them to scale, and of course, as the as the forecast of traffic is just that, right? It's a forecast. Then the flexibility of the platform allows them to add the capacity they need when they need it, and not before. And of course, the platform allows them to bridge between the SS7 and the diameter networks, and to perform the interworking that they need there. So this is a good example where the DSC was able to supply the critical performance and the security and the roaming functionality for the signaling messaging as the network is growing in this case. And there's a link there to a press release about this, and it's also on our website independently if that link for whatever reason is not working for you. So that was one case, and let's go on to the next one that I'd like to talk just a little bit about. If you could advance the slide there, Prasanna. So Telia Carrier is a great use case and a case study that we have also published on our website. You can get a copy of that. Telia Carrier is formerly Telia Sonera, of course, international services. So the Telia group runs an IPX network. It's quite a big and extensive network, over 200 POPs. And some time ago, they sought to introduce mobile roaming on this IPX platform that they had to address the 4G growth, and then to deploy a DSC to tackle the complexity of all the diameter signaling. So so the Ribbon DSC 8000 platform was rolled out some time ago for Telia. They launched their DRX roaming exchange. There was a tremendous growth in the amount of messages that they saw, and one thing which was really a key takeaway about this use case was that not only was the platform able to provide again the robust diameter features and centralized routing capabilities needed for the diameter, but they were able to deploy and leverage SS7 and diameter on the same platform. So essentially, ultimately that means that you're cutting the number of servers you need in half because you're leveraging the same platform, the same shelf units to deploy that solution. So there is a case study for this one. And then the third one I want to talk about is again about an IPX provider. This one is not a public reference, but it's actually typical of a few deployments that we have for IPX providers, both in North America as well as Europe. And these cases, the DSC has been deployed as an STP solution initially, and then also to address the diameter signaling requirements. And so what the beauty of this is that the IPX provider can be flexible in terms of offering DEA solutions that address either individual networks separately, so that they can really cut down on the interconnect arrangements and to simplify the connectivity to all of their network partners. And that could be done in a hosted type environment, or it can be done in a virtualized type of arrangement, basically giving them the flexibility to grow and manage independently all of those interfaces to each of their business partners. Because as you can imagine, contractual and business and service arrangements and upgrades and other configuration details change constantly in this type of environment. So having the flexibility to offer this sort of capability for the diameter edge agent to an IPX provider, this is an area where we've seen a lot of success. So with that, that was the third one that I wanted to talk about today. So why don't I just now take a moment to just summarize what we've talked about today, and what the key takeaways are. And after going through in detail the key challenges that we talked about at the beginning, and then Prasanna went through some of the solutions, these really are the key messages that we'd like you to remember after today's webinar, and that is that there is a challenge right now to replace end-of-life, end-of-support platforms, both STP and Diameter. And there are solutions for that we can offer. And not only that, but you can take the opportunity to protect your investment going forwards, because the solutions from Ribbon will handle both SS7 and Diameter signaling. So as you evolve your networks going forwards to address LTE and Diameter requirements, then you can support those requirements on the same platform. So really that's very important. We talked a lot about security, and security is going to be an issue going forwards in addressing the SS7 and Diameter networks. We have solutions for that. We're constantly working to make sure that the solutions and the procedures follow the latest guidelines as put out by the GSMA, and you can be confident that our solutions address those challenges and new procedures as they come online. And then the opportunity now to move forwards from 4G with virtualization and SS7 on the STP with virtualization, leveraging our existing DSE suite implementation, but then getting ready now for NFV use cases, getting ready for 5G use cases where NFV is going to be important. So all these factors are things which really, as you consider carefully your CapEx investments going forwards and your network architecture and operational decisions going forwards, these are the challenges that the Ribbon has answers for, and so we'd love to get engaged with you on those. And if we can go to the next slide. So just briefly touch upon why Ribbon for SS7 and Diameter signaling solutions. We've covered a lot of these things today. We've explained the fact that we have a single platform for SS7 and Diameter, and a depth and a very rich set of features to enable the best performance on the STP and Diameter platform. These are carrier grade and highly scalable platforms which come in a variety of different options: single, multi-shelf, virtualized, and in the near future NFV applications. Very high capacities to handle transactions on SS7 and Diameter, and of course all of this is backed up by Ribbon at the company level in terms of our broad portfolio of secure real-time communication solutions for software, cloud, and network infrastructure, and our global support. Right? I mean, our footprint for not only sales coverage but also for professional services and technical support. So I'd just like to highlight that in terms of, actually, if you could just go back one second, Mr. Pete. So back to our global customer base. We tackle, we have references, not as many public ones as we'd like, but tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and a huge kind of, pat on the back. We have over 1,100 deployments since 1996. So we've been in this game a long time. We know signaling, we know SS7, we know Diameter. So we are a strong partner for you for your signaling requirements. And yes, if we could now just go to the next slide, and a shout out for a customer focused conference that we hold each year called Perspectives. And Perspectives 2018 is being held this time at the JW Marriott in LA. This is a great opportunity to network with your peers, to learn more about the industry trends, to learn more about some of the solutions and the directions the industry is going, and to hear a little bit about Ribbon solutions from the Ribbon executive team and subject matter experts. So we would very much like to extend an invitation to our customers and those on the call to consider attending. Please contact your sales rep or visit the website there, and you can check out the event and get engaged going forward. So with that, just one more thing to say, and that is that if you go to the relevant window in this webinar, you will find the ability to download this Diameter Signaling for Dummies book. This has been hugely popular as of course all of the dummy series are, but this gives a a great introduction to diameter signaling. We have hard copies available that we bring to events whenever we meet our customers face to face, but you can download in a PDF from our website and from the webinar portal. And we have a lot of collateral that I'm sure you'll find very interesting. If you haven't taken the opportunity to access those already, then we have white papers on SS7 diameter, solution briefs, and case studies, and data sheet that describes our solution in full. So we should have you covered with all of those. These are all available for download from the website, ribboncommunications.com. So with that, we've come to the end of the webinar, but we do have a few moments left. Fortunately, we did a good job in keeping more or less to time, and so that gives us an opportunity now to address some of the questions that haven't already been answered in the chat window. And I can see that we've had quite an active conversation going in the chat window. So check that out, everyone. If you haven't seen those answers, what I would like to do is I saw an answer. I saw a question earlier, and I'd like to bring in one of our subject matter experts, Deborah Brunner Walker, to address this one. This is a very interesting question early on, and that was regarding the virtualized solution. Does it have STP TDM connections? And Deb did a great job of answering that in the chat window, but I think it might be worthwhile just, for the general audience, this is something key in our product offering this year. So Deborah, if we have you and you're up there, would you like to say a few comments about that?
Sure. As people know, when you're virtualized, you don't have the same physical connections that you would as on a TDM type of connection. But we've recognized that, and we've recognized the need for maintaining TDM connectivity. So in addition to our DSC 8000 solution that we offer today, which is our hardware-based solution, we are combining both our virtualized DSC SWE solution, which is available on a COTS platform, with a COTS-based, with our MARMS server and an I/O card from our existing SGX product line, and combining that with our DSC SWE software and bringing together a semi-virtualized solution. So you can either deploy a COTS-based DSC SWE STP with a remote device that will have a TDM card in it, which will connect transparently back to the DSC SWE, or you can combine that together into a all-in-one type of solution where you've got the DSC SWE running in conjunction with an I/O card.
Great, thanks, Deb, for that. That was a good detail that you provided there. Let me go to the chat, and I can see that there is one question there that hasn't been addressed, and I think perhaps I can ask either Bill or Deb again yourself. The question was, does the DSC 8000 and the DSC SWE have the same software code base? Meaning, does it have the same set of features in both deployments? Anyone like to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that. So yes, both solutions draw from the same code base. Today, however, the number portability solution that we offer on board on the DSC 8000 is maintained on the DSC 8000, and we have not ported that over to the DSC SWE. But aside from that, both solutions offer the same feature set.
That's great. Thank you, Deb. I saw a question here about the concept of DEA instances, and again, I think this is a very important one to the use case for IPX operators. And so perhaps let me ask that question again for the general audience. Deb, I think you might be up on deck perhaps to answer this one as well, and just expand on your answer a little bit in the chat window. And it's about, you know, the DSC 8000 supporting multi-tenancy to address different customers. And I think that spoke to the use case a little bit, but I'm sure you can provide some more color and background to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so multi-tenancy has multiple meanings, and it just depends on what definition of multi-tenancy you're talking about. So the DSC 8000, in terms of its diameter offering, allows for virtualization from within the system itself. So the DSC diameter node can be broken into multiple instances. So you can define up to 32 different diameter elements within that system itself. So you can have, for example, 15 or 20 DSC DEA nodes defined, and each one servicing a different operator. So you can set your own parameters for individually for each of those DEA elements. So you can have different QoS, different SLAs. You can provide throttling based on an individual DEA instance. All of those are configurable, so you can tailor those DEAs to each individual connection that you are doing. So in that concept, yes, we support multi-tenancy. Some people define multi-tenancy as being allowing each of those diameter edge agents that are defined separate control functions. So whereby your customer can go in and configure themselves individually. We do not do that. So we manage the system centrally. So you, as the owner of the DSC 8000, you would manage all of those individual instances that you set up.
Great, thanks, Deb. And actually, the question, I had a follow-up question, but I think you answered that in your answer there. So so that's great. So with that, I'm going to, seeing as we're close to the top of the hour, then I'm going to hand back to our coordinator, Lance, to wrap up and just close out the webinar today.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I appreciate you guys attending today. I want to say thank you to Kim and Prasanna, and, of course, Deb and Bill for their help on the back end with the questions. Just to reiterate what Kim mentioned earlier, please do visit us at ribboncommunications.com. Plenty of collateral there for you to download, and also plenty of ways to get in contact with us should you have another question that didn't get answered today. Plenty of contact us forms and things of that nature. We will be sending an email to you shortly with a replay of today's webinar. And again, you can also respond to that and ask us any questions that you may have. We certainly do appreciate everyone's time today, and we look forward to having you all on our next webinar coming down the road soon. Thanks again, and have a great day.